One Question is brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996. Okay, Jack, so you guys announced last week the construction of new baseball and softball facilities. The number that was in the article was $5 million. And I'm curious to start how the additions will change the competitive expectations for both or either programs.
Well, I think the first thing is that you have to recognize in the Northeast that you need artificial surfaces. And we have them in most of the facilities for our outdoor sports. We have not had them in baseball and softball. They become the last two. So I think there's certainly a practical purpose to doing it, which in terms of competitiveness, you're on the field more often. You can practice more often. You would probably attract a level of student athlete that would recognize a facility upgrade like this as a commitment to athletics. I think all those things factor in. But the reality is that the baseball and softball field, this is where it became a point where it had to move forward. And 2 years ago, it was a rough winter in the Northeast. Lacrosse plays on an artificial surface that's 50 yards away from where the baseball and softball fields are. And our first lacrosse game was on February 20th, and our first baseball game was on April 5th. So two fields that were 50 yards apart, the start of their seasons were 7 weeks. It was a difference of 7 weeks because we couldn't get on those natural grass fields because of the weather.
Yeah, and I'm always interested in within the Ivy League in this cohort of, the premier academic institutions around the nation. How do you and your coaches try to position Brown against other options within the league that prospective student athletes may be considering for whatever sport we're talking about?
Yeah, I think the challenge both to attract students from that are looking at other options, both within the league and outside of the league, is a challenge. It's a challenge for everybody. Everyone wants to position their institution as it best can be. I think Brown's a great institution with a lot of academic options, and students recognize that, and I think students are aware of it going into the recruitment process or early in the recruitment process. If they've done some homework on Brown, they've found that out. Our job is to make sure that what we're packaging is the best academic and athletic experience that we can. The facilities, which we just talked about, comes into play there. Who we hire as coaches certainly plays a huge part in that. So we've got to make sure that the academic and athletic option at Brown is as best as can be, because if you're trying to go after the best student athletes, they typically have options, and we want to make sure that Brown is option number one.
What about being an AD in the Ivy League versus an experience like you had previously at Hofstra? What are the differences or similarities?
The similarities are, again, highly competitive at the Division I level. You're trying to attract the best students you can. Clearly a little different on the non-scholarship piece. But you also have far less transfer situations than you would have in the Ivy League than at some other schools. So, and fewer students leaving early. So there's some consistency that you would see at these institutions. But the competitiveness, you bring students in, great students academically. They want to go to these schools. They know what these schools have to offer. But at the end of the day, they want to win also. And they want to make sure that we're playing the best teams possible. So you find yourself scheduling games or playing teams in the postseason where, we really have to work very hard because we're playing athletically, we're playing some of the best schools in the country.
You also spent time at Connecticut prior to your stint at Hofstra. The term arms race, and specifically as it applies to facilities, what does that mean in the Ivy League versus how you perceived that when you were at UConn?
Yeah, I honestly think it means the same thing. Now, some schools may be building facilities that are larger or stadiums that are larger, but the intent is no different. You have to position your school as best you can. You have to demonstrate to high school students that you're committed to building an athletic program, and you have to be able to attract quality coaches when you have vacancies. And you can do everything right. You can make sure that you dot every I and cross every T to put your athletic program in the best position you can. But if you're lagging behind on the facilities piece, it's going to negate everything else you did because it's so visible, and because you don't, the story on what impression a high school student or a high school coach or a high school guidance counselor will make on the facilities, it sometimes is done where you don't have an opportunity to explain. They come in, they visit the campus in July, they stroll through without anyone knowing they're there. They look at a couple facilities that might be lagging, and then they get back in the car and they cross that school off the list. And you don't have an opportunity to say, but here are the other great things we've done, or we certainly want to get to that facility issue. You don't get a chance to do it. They come in, they make up their own mind. They develop their own impressions, and they're back in the car and they're off to another school. And you need to make sure that the facilities piece is addressed, because you just never know who's coming by and who's making an impression. And we need to be in a situation, as every other school does, where the facilities is something you can lead with as an example of how committed you are. And that's how you get the best students, that's how you get the best coaches, and ultimately that's how you remain as competitive as possible. And that, I think that as we have this conversation right now, like you could take that out and you could put it into a discussion with any other school at the Division I level in any other league. Now, the facilities they may be trying to build or renovate or enhance might be different, but the intent would be the same.
How many projects for the university are going on right now at Brown, and do you have a ballpark of the dollar amount? And because I want to make a corollary here, but do you know that context off the top of your head?
So the baseball softball project is a $5 million project. We have a renovation that involves locker rooms and a training room with football that is an $8 million project. We are renovating our boathouse, and our two rowing programs, our men's and women's programs, compete regularly for those national championships. And we don't have a number on that yet, but my early guess, depending on what direction we go in, will be more than $10 million. And we have a renovation of locker rooms in our basketball facility right now that we're doing this summer that is probably going to be in the ballpark of $800,000. So those are four ongoing projects right now, where two of the four will be completed by September 1, and the others are going to have to follow shortly thereafter.
And then what else is going on campus non-athletically from a construction enhancement improvement standpoint?
Nonstop, renovation of residence halls, because a residence hall in some ways very similar to an athletic facility. That if families go through and see it, they're going to make decisions on how committed the school is. So those are things that Brown addresses annually. Each summer, particularly, you would see quite a bit of renovation work, new construction taking place on campus. So, and as you can imagine, that people will come back who haven't been out of school that long and can't believe some of the changes and upgrades and enhancements that have taken place, because you really need to do it all the time.
And that's the one frustration I have with how mainstream media categorizes the facilities arms race in college athletics, is that this is not only applied to athletics, right? I mean, all of these campuses around the nation, you name a school, they probably have some sort of construction project going to attract their next class of incoming freshmen and those younger. So, inevitably, every school out there has plans on paper or steel going vertical to do the same thing as what we're doing in athletics. And I feel like that is missed to a degree by some of those who write regularly about college athletics.
I would agree. Labs, residence halls, performing arts centers, those are all things that you continue to see on college campuses because they attract students and they attract the best and brightest, and that's what everyone's trying to do.
And that's today's One Question, brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996. One Question is designed to give D1 Ticker subscribers valuable insights on how executive leaders in college athletics think about key issues on their respective campuses, in their departments, or within their leagues and conferences. One Question is brought to you by Turnkey Search, a top industry search firm since 1996.